Hey folks, it's Fernando doing another video for More Survivalist. If you're in the least interested in armed self-defense, I suggest you stick around. I'm going to be making in this video an extremely solid case for the Glock platform as the only handgun in which you should focus your efforts. You should invest your hard-earned money, you should invest your time in learning and mastering. This is a video that's basically from a request that I got that says, Fernando, thank you for the excellent website and videos. I find your information more useful and realistic than any survival sites out there. Well, thanks a lot for that. You and others have convinced me about Glocks. Maybe you could recommend model numbers, details for personal defense. I would also be interested in comparison of United States states to relocate. Thanks for all your excellent work, Manny. Well, Manny, regarding the second question about different states to relocate within the United States, I'm going to be doing a separate video on that later on. On the meantime, there is my book, Bugging Out and Relocating, which the link is available somewhere there below. It's this book. In it, I cover some of the states of the United States as well as countries, but especially I do cover the methodology that you should be using for relocating anywhere within the United States. I do use different charts so as to analyze some of the most important categories within the United States, but especially that the methodology you should be using to analyze any place you should be considering. So regarding your first question about specific Glock models, I'd first like to explain why you should focus on Glocks only, basically. And I know that some of you guys are probably going nuts right now, especially firearms enthusiasts. You have different models you like, you have different guns, maybe you even hate Glock pistols, you don't like them. And this is coming from me as a firearms collector, actually a licensed firearms collector from Argentina, which is not an exactly easy piece of paperwork to get. I love guns. I mean, I've loved guns from a very early age. I started shooting defensive shooting at the age of 15, real firearms course. And you know, not only that, I like the designs. I've studied the creations of Browning, how fantastic it is, how he resolves stuff mechanically speaking. I've collected all sorts of guns, bought, sold, number of them, went on my different path and such, and basically I ended up with this conclusion, which is going to be saving you thousands of bucks in terms of navigating around and figuring it out later on, years from now, what it took me to realize. You just have to focus on the Glock pistol for a few simple reasons that I'm going to be explaining right now. I mean, I've convinced die-hard 1911 fanatics of the Glock pistol. I mean, I'm talking about guys that were, you know, absolutely certain about the superiority of the 1911, having, you know, these custom $1,000 guns or $3,000 guns, and even those guys, after years of denial, they ended up agreeing with me on why you should go for the Glock pistol. So basically a few points, I'll get right to it. First of all, the first point to understand is industry. What I mean by this is that you're constantly bombarded and influenced and attacked by the same stuff that is affecting pretty much everything else in our society. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's cell phones, if it's a fast food joint, if it's you know, anything. Publicity, marketing is constantly working so as to convince you of buying crap that you probably don't need. It's no different in the world of guns, all right? The firearm industry is still an industry, and it's not like this, like liberals want to convince you about the evil gun lobby. It's not so much as an evil gun lobby as it is an industry, and so as to survive, the industry has to convince you to buy what they have for sale. So a gun that is a millimeter shorter, a quarter of an ounce lighter, or whatever, and anything possible is going to be marketed. It's going to be making it in the cover of the next Guns and Ammo magazine, and people tend to fall for that. People tend to be convinced by the advertising, by the marketing. It's really no different from soft drinks, sodas. It's Pepsi, Coke, 7-Up, Fanta. What is better? At the end of the day, we all know that the best thing to drink is just pure normal water. That's the best thing to drink. But you're still convinced, you're still paying for something that you actually know it's not as good. Yeah, once you realize this, you kind of understand that you have to take a step back and coldly analyze your options and not let yourself be influenced by the industry, by the advertising, by the marketing tricks, gimmicks that are common to any other product being placed. So, what is it that you actually need in terms of a handgun, and which one is simply the best? The best for what? The best for your needs? And here we're looking at it from the perspective of a modern survivalist. It's going to be a gun for mainly defensive use purposes, correct? It's a gun that you're going to be using in these unlikely self-defense scenarios, but still you're going to be carrying it on a daily basis. You're going to be training with it. You're going to be trying to be as good as possible. So which gun should you be going for? And there's so many of them, right? The thing is this, last 20 years, all guns look like the Glock pistol for a reason. It's the gun that all other guns would have liked to be, okay? Until not that long ago, it was the 1911. The 1911 was the gun to which all other models were compared. Anything else proposed, anything else in terms of defensive handguns was going to be immediately compared and measured towards the 1911 pistol. Does it have more capacity or less capacity than a standard 1911 pistol? You're going to be having more precision. Is it going to be more reliable than a 1911? Now the Glock is the standard by which all other guns are measured. It's the quintessential handgun of the 21st century. It's the gun that all our guns are being compared, and I don't think that there's one out there that has reached not only the popularity, but also how reliable it is, how accurate. If you combine all those things, if you combine a lightweight, clever design, reliability, availability of spare parts, ease of maintenance and repair, accuracy, if you combine all those, you're not going to be finding a gun that scores as well as the Glock pistol in all those categories. I just don't see it. And in terms of firearms, again, look at the 1911. We're talking about 100, give or take 100-year-old gun. It's not 1 year to the other that a gun reaches this level of acceptance, of proof reliability. It takes decades. So as of right now, that gun is the Glock, specifically Glock 17. You could make a case for the Glock 19, but specifically the Glock 17 is that gun, all right? And maybe 10, 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about some other gun. Maybe there's going to be some other design that revolutionizes the world of handguns. But so far, that's the Glock 17. Now, why is it that you should just focus on the Glock and not waste your time in guns that are probably just as good or better according to who you ask, depending on who you ask? Is a Heckler & Koch better? Is SIG better? Is the Springfield better? Is Smith & Wesson better? Why should you just focus on that? The thing is this, at least from my personal experience in the world of guns, and what I've seen other people end up doing themselves as well, is you start you take your first baby steps in the world of firearms, and maybe you say, okay, I'm just getting started. I don't need a Glock pistol. I don't need to spend 500, 600 bucks on a new Glock, right? I'm just as well with a Taurus revolver, a Taurus pistol, or some other brand that's cheaper. I don't need top of the line gun, right? You start buying these things, you start floating around, and you think of trying different things, but at the end of the day, you are still limited in two important factors, which is your funds, your money, and your time. How much time you're going to be dedicating to this. It's one thing if you want to start collecting guns, all right? If you want to do it as a hobby, if you want to collect guns, sky is the limit. You can own hundreds of them, thousands of guns. You're never going to be having enough. But if you want to be specific about having a sidearm, a weapon that you're going to be mastering, that you're going to be as good as you could possibly get, all right, you have to focus all your efforts, all your resources towards that. And just buying the gun is not even the biggest financial effort that you're going to be making. It's about the training you're going to be paying for, the time you're going to be spending in it, the ammunition you're going to be spending on it. If you start maybe with a 1911 because someone convinced you that's the thing you have to go for, you start with your 1911, you first pay for the gun, you buy that 45 ammunition, it's going to be expensive, you waste, at the end of the day, that's what ends up happening. You're wasting time with a system that is in no possible way as good as a Glock, all right? No matter how good you are with a 1911, a guy with a Glock pistol that is as good as you are, it's always going to be beating you. He's going to be shooting faster. And here, I'm not talking specifically about action shooting sports, about race guns. We go back to this idea of the gun as your one and only weapon, which you're going to be learning to a degree that you're going to be mastering that weapon like no other. Now, if you divide that, what ends up happening many times is that people that like guns, they will have a large collection of guns. They will have their hunting guns, they will have their competitive shooting guns, they will have a race gun, 1911 in which they put a few $1,000 in it, and it's great, the trigger is awesome, it's very accurate. Then they will have their Glock pistol or SIG, which they use for tactical defensive shooting classes or whatnot. Then they have this little subcompact pistol, which is the one that they actually carry. Okay, so you end up having all these different guns that you use for all these different tasks, but you're never gonna be as good as if you had focused all that time in just one gun. And I actually have a good story regarding this. This was a few years ago when I was doing my firearms instructor class. This was like the instructor's class. It was like 3-4 months, a couple of times a week. And one of those parts was shooting for accuracy. We were, like 5-6 guys, give or take okay shots. We were all guys doing our instructor's training, so we were give or take pretty good shooters in general. Sometimes you shoot a little bit better, sometimes a bit worse, but all things considered, adequate shooters. So we were focusing on precision. We were trying to make our shooting at 7 yards maybe, trying to make that ragged hole as small as possible, right? And some of us were having more success than others and such, but all of a sudden this guy drops by. He was another instructor, an instructor from Venezuela actually, and he was a civilian. He wasn't military, but he was a civilian shooter that competed but also worked in security as well. He was like some kind of a bodyguard or security guy for like some rich guy, I don't know, in Venezuela. And he dropped by, and our instructor, Baigorria, told him, take a few shots and show the guys how it's done. And we all, got around the guy, and this guy came, picked a Glock that he had never shot before. He picked it up, he got into a good isosceles position, bam, 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 5 shots. And I think it was like 5 shots 7 yards away. It wasn't that long a distance, but this guy didn't shoot a ragged hole. This guy shot a hole that was barely larger than the 9mm projectile that the gun was shooting. I mean, it was incredible, especially when you consider that the guy shooting a specific pistol that he had never shot before. He wasn't used to that specific gun. But it turns out the guy only shot with his Glock. He used that same Glock for standard pistol competition. He used that same Glock for training, for the classes, for defensive shooting classes, for action shooting, and for work as well. He did all with that same pistol. So he got to learn that platform, the Glock pistol, so well that he was better than pretty much anyone else that divides in different, spends his time in different guns, trying to learn different systems, just focusing on one. He actually told us of a shooting in which he was involved. He had gone to the bank to get some money for his boss, and he was on the street. So all of a sudden he turns around and there's a guy pointing a gun at his face, right? No time to do anything. He just got, they had the drop on him, got a gun to his face, just like that. And the guy did what he was trained to do, what he had practiced so much. He just drawed and started shooting from the hip like that, and going up. And he shot like several times the guy in front of him. And then he started looking for his friends, saw another guy, an accomplice of the other one, leaving in a bike. Couple shots to the other guy. Long story short, he got shot himself because he had the bad guy had the drop on him. He had the gun pointed at him, but he was doing this gangster type of thing, which even at such a short range, because of this thing of doing like that, he shot him in the leg. So he didn't get shot in the chest, which was pretty fortunate for him because it could have been much worse. And that's something that I always remember. A guy that just focuses, a guy that doesn't have a lot of money, a lot of guns, he just has one gun, but he knows that gun so well that whenever it ends up being needed on the street, because of focusing only on one system, he is extremely good with it. Okay, you have to understand that Glock is used by pretty much, what is it, like 65% of the police force in the United States. Pretty sure it's like 65% of the police force or military anywhere else as well. Well, maybe not military because they have different standards, but for police, the Glock pistol is a standard you're going to be finding anywhere. Sure, you can make a case for maybe the high power in some places, especially in South America, in some of the Middle Eastern countries. High power is still very popular, but in any half-decent place that you end up in, if someone hands you over a gun, it's going to be something kind of resembling something like this. It's going to be something that looks like a Glock 17. It's going to be either a Glock 17 or a Glock 19. And this brings us to the basic suggestion, recommendation that our friend there was asking in the email, which specific Glock. I suggest a Glock 17, the first gun that you should own, maybe the only one that you should own, and learn to shoot as well as humanely possible. This kind of proficiency with a gun, it takes a lot of time. Being as good as you should strive to be, it takes all your effort. It takes all your time. You don't have time to practice within your gun if you want to be that good. If you want to be as good as you should try to be. With a Glock 17, you could even make a case for a Glock 19, Glock 17, Glock 19. I think that the Glock 17 is carryable enough. I think it's, with inside the waistband holster. This is something that you can carry all day long. In case you're wondering, this is a blade tick holster inside the waistband. I think it's a Phantom model. you can carry this all day long, and it's not going to be making a difference if it's 19 or 17. And why lose the sight radius? Why lose the capacity? Just go for a 17. With a 17, with a Glock 17, you have a gun that may be the only handgun you will ever need. It's going to be good enough for defensive purposes. It's going to be good enough for you to practice and train and compete with in standard pistol. With a Glock 17, you're going to be good enough. And you're going to be reaching that level of being so familiar, so good with that specific gun, that if the day unfortunately ever comes that you actually need it on the streets, you're going to be so much better than the other guy that is struggling with a subcompact God knows what thing. It also gives you the possibility of, you have subcompact Glock pistols, you have very tiny Glock pistols, but it's all within that same Glock platform. So you're learning not only a specific pistol, but you're also learning a platform which gives you options in different calibers. This takes me a little bit to, if you want to, with a Glock 17, with a Glock 19 and 9mm, with a good round, with good jacket hollow points, 9mm, light rounds, 124 grain plus P ammunition, it's going to be good enough. Buying some of the premium gold dots or some of the other good brands, it's going to be more than adequate for defensive purposes. And at the same time, it's cheap enough, affordable enough that it allows you to do this. Practice time and again, spend the money in more training, in more classes. The expensive thing about shooting is not buying the gun. Not even the classes are the expensive thing. The expensive thing is the ammunition that it takes to be that good as you should strive to be. With 9mm, you can do that. And at the same time, you load it with the right round, and you're ready for your concealed carry gun. It's still perfectly adequate. Now, if you want to take it a step forward, a little bit better than that, you want a little bit more power, I personally like the Glock 31 in 357 SIG. You're perfectly okay with the Glock 17, Glock 19. But if you want that extra little, once you've mastered, once you've shot a good amount of thousands of rounds in different classes, and you want maybe something a little bit more, Glock 31 in 357 SIG, the advantage is there's several things that I like about it. Basically, it's the same pistol, right? It's the same format as the Glock 17. So your holsters, your magazine carriers and pouches, all that stuff is going to be the same thing. In fact, it's basically the Glock 40 in 40 Smith & Wesson with a different barrel. The only difference between the Glock in 22 in 40 and the Glock 31 in 357 SIG is the barrel. The magazines are the exact same. You can use the same magazines for 40 and for 357 SIG. So basically, if you have a Glock 31, you can just change the barrel, put a 40 Smith & Wesson barrel, and shoot 40 ammunition, which is of course cheaper than 357 SIG for practice and for training. A little bit more expensive than 9mm, but 40 Smith & Wesson is still somewhat, on the affordable side of things, not as expensive as 357. So yeah, there you have. You still have good amount of magazine capacity, and you have a very nice round. You're talking about a round that shoots very nicely, very accurate. You can squeeze a lot of accuracy out of that with training. As the more you train, the better you get with it. There's so much that you can do with that Glock 17, or of course Glock 31. Once you're good with it, you're going to be on a different level. If you are that guy, if you're the guy with only one gun, that you've mastered it to such a degree that you use it for competition, for your classes, for carrying it, then if the day ever comes, you're going to be on a different level from the average thug or the average guy on the street that is not in that same level of proficiency with the firearm. And that's basically it, folks. If you like the video, just leave a thumbs up, share it with others, subscribe as well. Take care, and of course see you in our next video. Have a great day.